Well, hello everyone, and welcome to, well, it's take 2 of my kitchen table. I did honestly do a kitchen table for you the other day. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful setting. The content was remarkable. Quite possibly the best kitchen table I've done yet. And I thought at the end, that's a little bit on the long side, round about 29 minutes. Downloaded it onto my computer, 2.5 hours. Because it was all filmed in slow-mo. How much of a muppet am I? Oh dear. And unfortunately, I could speed it up, so you could actually see me in reasonably real time, but there was no sound. So anyway, we've got to do it again, and what a place we've got. Listen, I've come back to the, it's the port, no, it's not the Port Melbourne, it's the Albert Park Fishing and Yacht Club. It's on the frontier in Melbourne, and as you can see, it's an absolutely glorious setting. It's a Saturday morning and it's all going off. Look, the beautiful people, the beautiful fit people on the beach playing volleyball. I was there at 6 o'clock this morning. I've done my 10-kilometre run in my dreams. But yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it? And I've got to say a big thank you to the members here at the Fishing and Yacht Club who have made me feel most welcome. Thank you very much, guys, for allowing me to sit here and do my kitchen table this morning. So, well, we've had a little bit of time, haven't we, to cogitate over the ins and outs, the goings on of Rally Monte-Carlo, and it was, well, you know what, it was a great start to the season. I think it was anyway, because there was so much anticipation. We had Ogier in a new team, we had our world champion Tänak in a new team, we had Neuville obviously settled within that Hyundai team, and then we had the unknown factors with the boy wonder. Do you want to call him the boy wonder? Do you want to call him the freak from Finland? Call him what you like, Rovanperä. We had the excitement, the anticipation of his debut in a World Rally car in the World Rally Championship. And on top of that, Elfyn Evans moving. Lots to look forward to. Yes, we'd lost Citroën in the off-season, but there was a lot to look forward to ahead of Monte-Carlo. And do you know what? When we have so much anticipation at times, it can be a little bit of a letdown, can't it? We can get someone coming out and going from start to finish and dominating the rally. And occasionally it can be a little bit of a letdown. But, well, we weren't at all disappointed by Monte-Carlo this year. It was a stunning rally. It really was, from start to finish. Stage 4, when we had that massive accident for Tänak. Thank goodness, by the way, that Tänak and his co-driver were both absolutely fine. It was a very frightening accident. It was more or less flat out. They flew through the air, they took the tops off trees, they went down a cliff, the car rolled, it tumbled, it smashed into things, and they walked away. They walked away from that. And why did they walk away? Well, 10 or 15 years ago, they might not, sadly, have walked away from an impact of that velocity, of that speed and intensity. But the FIA, in conjunction with the teams and the manufacturers and their safety division, have worked really, really hard over the years to make these cars safer. They will never, ever be entirely safe. That's impossible. No car will be entirely safe. But my goodness me, the cockpit now is a safety cell, effectively. The extra padding they've put in, the positioning of the seats, the hands devices, the strength in the roll cage, all of that protected the crew within that Hyundai in that awful crash. And they continue in the work they do, the FIA safety division, in all aspects of motorsport, but particularly rallying, because rallying, as we know, there are particular challenges faced by rally cars and rally crews that really you're not going to face in any other discipline of motorsport. And there are continual developments in the pipeline, continual developments coming on stream that add to the safety of the crews within the cars. And for sure, the boys at Hyundai were absolutely, they were fine, which is just incredible when you think of the speed. And as I say, the forces involved in that accident were massive. But what can we say about Tänak? Let's start with Tänak. Well, we only really saw him for 3 stages. He certainly didn't dominate those 3 stages, far, far from it, in fact. Did he look comfortable in the car? Was the accident a sign of him over pushing? To both, I would say he didn't look entirely confident, but the accident wasn't down to him over pushing either. The accident, we believe, was down to maybe just missing that compression on that high-speed left-hander in his pace notes. A number of other drivers had that compression and a little warning there. But did he look confident? Did he look comfortable? Well, not entirely, and that's to be expected. He spent a couple of years at Toyota. He's won the championship in the Toyota. The Toyota is a very particular car. You come to Hyundai, again, it's a great car, it's a competitive car. It has its issues, or it has had its issues in the past, and we know that. We've seen that with the likes of Andreas Mikkelsen. We've heard it from Danny Sordo in the past. We've heard it as well from Thierry Neuville in the past, just how difficult it is at times and in certain circumstances to set that Hyundai up right. It will take Tänak a little bit of time. It really will, to get 100% comfortable, to get back to the dominant performance that we saw, the dominant level of performance that we saw at Hyundai, at Toyota. He started last year, and every time he got into that car, you expected him to be winning, and you expected him to win the rally. And if something didn't happen unexpectedly, then he was going to win the rally. Now, that's not going to be the same this year. I'm absolutely sure that it will take him a little while just to get up to speed. Big problem he's got, and we haven't seen this in a reigning world champion for quite some time, the big issue he's got is he starts with a 30-point handicap. It's a 12-round season for him now. You can't afford too many big fat zeros on your score sheet at the end of the year, particularly when the season is shaping up to be so competitive. I can't remember the last time it happened. The reigning world champion going to Monte-Carlo, Ogier dominated Monte-Carlo for years. Before that, Loeb dominated Monte-Carlo as a world champion. You probably have to go back to the Solberg-Gronholm world champion days to actually find an example of where a reigning champion has started a season at such a disadvantage. And it's a double whammy, triple whammy maybe, points whammy, pressure whammy, getting to know the car, triple whammy. Really, how is he going to cope with it? It's a new situation, but what we know about Tänak is that he is very well equipped to deal with these challenges. He's a very different driver from the driver that we saw 3 or 4 years ago. He's a supremely confident young man. He's an experienced young man. He's in a team with a boss, Adamo, who knows what he has to deliver. But it's still going to take a little while just to get all of those elements together, where he starts every rally knowing, well, I should win this rally. I don't know, let's wait and see, but I know for sure that it's going to be a little bit tricky out there in Sweden for Tänak. It's going to be tricky. We've got to move on from Tänak, but it's going to be quick because we're going to come to Sweden. But it's going to be tricky for a number of reasons. One, because of that pressure he's put on himself. Two, because of his road position. We just don't know what Sweden is going to be like. For me, looking at the test footage we've seen, it's a muddy mess. It's an absolute sloppy, slushy, muddy mess. What does that mean? It means that any ice that we've got, and there is precious little, any ice that we've got, it is going to degrade. The more cars that come through, the more that ice gets used. These World Rally cars, the new ones, massive torque, massive power going in to those studs and ripping up that ice. By the time you get down to car number 9, which is what Tänak will be on the road, I think he'll be number 9, there could be precious little of that ice left, and it could just be a muddy mess, and it could be very difficult for Tänak to find himself pushing at the front. That might all be different because the weather could all change next week. We might get bucket loads of snow, and the best position to be might be 9th or 10th on the road. I don't know, but again, it all adds to the challenge that Tänak's got, and for me it's going to be interesting to watch and see how he responds to that challenge. Are we going to see the uber confident Tänak from the Toyota days who just puts it all behind him, gets into the car and goes for the win? Or at the back of his mind, is he thinking championship, championship, championship? I have to get points here, I have to score, I have to make sure I don't make any further mistakes, because it was a mistake, no question about that, in Monte-Carlo. And he's up against, well, let's just talk about our two main drivers, because he's up against 3 or 4 drivers, I think, for the win in in Sweden. But let's talk about his teammate first of all, our rally winner. Sorry about that little cut there. Did you catch that? That's me being silly. Got slightly distracted for a second, but I'm back on with you now. Thierry Neuville, what a victory it was for him in Monte-Carlo. He's been in Monte-Carlo many, many times, and he hasn't won it. That was his first win in Monte-Carlo, and my goodness me, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because he looked different. His approach was different. You might argue he was in the best position. He was up against drivers who were in new cars, who perhaps didn't feel confident, particularly on that final day, where remember, it was all very, very tight. Maybe they didn't feel as confident in their machinery as Neuville did. Neuville felt confident, pushed on, and took a glorious victory. But more than that, there is something about Neuville, and I've learned in the past, it's very difficult to say things have changed drastically on the evidence of one rally. But for me, this is not on the evidence of one rally. I'll go back to maybe Spain last year. There is a steeliness about Neuville. Neuville is sick and tired of being the bridesmaid. 4 times runner-up in the World Championship. What we know in life is that if you continue to do the things the same way as you've done previously, you can't expect a different result. The result will be the same. Neuville knows that something has to change if he is to achieve what he's capable of achieving, which is winning the World Championship. If he does the same as last year, the year before, and the year before that, guaranteed he'll end up runner-up again this year. And something has changed, and I'm not the only one who's noticed it. I talked to his dad. Yes, his dad is clearly going to be unbelievably positive about young Neuville, but he said a number of people had spoken to him and said, there's something different about Thierry this weekend. We listened to Andrea Adamo in the post-event press conference. He reckoned he'd seen a change in Neuville in Spain last year. And what is that change? Well, I don't know. He's never lacked confidence, but has it kind of been a false confidence, maybe a bit of front from Thierry Neuville in the past? Maybe he did lack the real belief that he could beat every time Ogier in a straight fight, that he could beat every time Tänak in a straight fight. On the face of it, he did think he could. I'm not so sure deep down that was the truth though, but I think that's changed. I think he realises now he's in a fantastic position. He knows the car, he knows the team, the car has been built around him, and those issues that car has had, he's worked through them, he's worked them out, the team have worked them out, and the car works well for him, and he's comfortable, and we saw that, and that advantage very much played into his hands on the Sunday in Monte-Carlo, where both Ogier and we'll come on to this kid in a minute, Evans were in a position to take the win in terms of where they were relevant to Neuville. They weren't in a position to take the win in terms of their confidence with the machinery under them. Evans said it just didn't click. It clicked beautifully in day 1 and day 2. He didn't have to think about it. He was winning stages. He was leading the rally. The same with Ogier. It came nice and easy to him. The stages changed in characteristics on the final day, and it didn't come quite so easily. What we know about Ogier, and we've seen it in the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons, is that it's very much a measured approach from Ogier. He is not willing to take unnecessary risks. He's not willing to throw everything away to risk winning a rally. He knows that you build a championship with a progression of points, that zeros actually, well, those will absolutely catastrophically affect potentially your title challenge. So he doesn't take that ultimate risk. And that's what we saw on Sunday. He wasn't prepared to take the risks, wasn't prepared to push on. Evans in his Toyota just didn't feel the car underneath him, whereas Neuville, he knew what that car was going to do on those stages, and it gave him the victory. And I think he is a real challenger this year. Ogier will be a challenger. You'll get to know that car better. You'll get more confident in the car. We know how quick it is. Tänak will be a challenger. A lot of that will depend on what happens in Sweden. Can't write anyone off after 2 rallies, but he needs a good result in Sweden. But do we have to start talking about potentially a 4th driver in the mix? Do we have to include Elfyn Evans on the evidence of Monte Carlo? Too early to say. Too early to say. We've seen it before. We saw it in Corsica last year, where he looked untouchable until that puncture on the final stage. We'll see how he gets on in Sweden, and then we'll see how he gets on the gravel. But he will be a contender for wins this year, Elfyn Evans. Has he got the consistency to perhaps put a challenge in for the title? Well, do you know what? I don't think he has to. I think this year for Evans has to be about bedding in with the team, about showing his ability on tarmac in particular, showing his ability on gravel. But he doesn't need the pressure of pushing for a title. Toyota's driver title challenge comes from Sebastian Ogier. No question about that. Next year, it's a different matter. Ogier, we understand, will go at the end of this year. Next year, the two main drivers at Toyota will probably be Evans, Rovanperä, one other. That is Evans' chance to push for potentially a world title. I think this year he will challenge. He will challenge for wins on certain rallies, and he will quite possibly win a rally or two this year. But it's too early to say whether he will be pushing for the title this year, and I don't think it's the right thing for him to do. I don't think certainly he should be thinking about it. If it comes, it comes. If he finds himself in a position where, yes, he is right there and he has the potential to win the title, I'm not saying don't go for it. He has to go for it. But he mustn't put that pressure on himself at the start of the year. It was a great start. It was a phenomenal start from Evans. It was a start that was quite unexpected. But he needs to maintain it. Let's see how he gets on. Now, we talked a little bit about Rovanperä. What a debut from Rovanperä. You know, you look at drivers who have come into the World Rally Championship, they've made that progression up to the very top level. And you look in the past how long it's taken them to become challengers for podiums and then ultimately regular challengers for wins. And you know, you look at Andreas Mikkelsen. Yeah, it was a long time for Andreas Mikkelsen, you could argue. That he didn't quite get to that very top level. You look at Thierry Neuville, it took him a long time, 2 or 3 seasons before he became a regular podium challenger. The same with Tänak. Ogier was different, took Ogier 6 months. I fully expect young Rovanperä to slip into the Ogier mould. I think by Finland, he'll be there or thereabouts. He'll be in that car pushing for a podium on Rally Finland. It was a phenomenal debut. We've seen how difficult it is to master these cars in the past. For young drivers stepping up from R5 to the new generation World Rally cars. We've seen how difficult it is. Didn't seem difficult at all for young Rovanperä. He got into the car. What he showed us a really interesting side to him that maybe we haven't seen before. He showed intelligence. He really did. He showed restraint. He showed the ability not to get carried away. He's in a World Rally car. It's Monte-Carlo Rally. He's going well. But he knew he lacked confidence on studded tyres, particularly when he had them crossed over on the axle in certain conditions. And what we saw splits that were phenomenal. He'd hit the ice and he would rein it back in. Didn't get carried away. He would rein it back in and he would lose a lot of time in comparison to the other boys. But that didn't matter. He wasn't bothered about that. That's intelligence. That really is. He wanted to get every kilometre under his belt. He wanted to use every minute in that car as a learning process. And for me, it bodes incredibly well. Listen, what can he do in Sweden? Sweden is just a lottery because of A, the length of the rally, B, the conditions. I don't know what he can do. Maybe we'll talk about Sweden before the event. Maybe when we get to Sweden, because we go to Sweden Monday, Tuesday. We'll go out and we'll have a look at the stages and we'll bring you an update from the stages and we'll let you know what we think might happen then. But let's talk a little bit about why I'm here in Australia. I'm here because, as you can see, look, it's glorious. The sun's shining and it's miserable back home. But during the week, I went along to the test day for the Australian Rally Championship. Now, the Australian Rally Championship is like any other championship in the world. It's very cyclical. It has its ups and it has its downs. And you know, in the glory days, there were manufacturers. There was Subaru. I think there was Mitsubishi. There were various other manufacturers. It was well supported. And you know, and it's had since then, it's had a few little troughs. And are things back on the up with the Australian Rally Championship? Well, I sincerely hope so. What we have in the Australian Rally Championship are a couple of very talented young brothers, the Bates brothers. And you know, the Yaris AP4 car that Neil Bates, their father, has developed is a fantastic car. Last year, 100% reliable. They built reliability, they built speed into that car. And in Lewis and Harry, they have two very exciting young drivers. There are a couple of other drivers around this year, the likes of Luke Kinnear and one or two others. You know, my friend from Coffs Harbour, what's his name? What's my friend from Coffs Harbour called? Oh, I forget his name. What's his name? Oh, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. Oh, former Australian Rally champion. No, nobody's going to help me with this one. Anyway, we know, it's going to come to me. Stand by, folks, while I just think of this. Nathan Quinn. Nathan Quinn, thank you. Sorry, Nathan. How can you forget Nathan Quinn, one of the biggest characters in rallying? He's in an R5 car for the opening rounds. I think in terms of budget, we'll have to wait and see how he gets on for the rest of the season. But that's quite exciting as well. Nathan Quinn, for me, one of the most gifted drivers we've seen in Australia for a few years. But what I wanted to talk about, young Harry Bates, Australian Rally champion, big talent, really big natural talent. He obviously wants to prove that talent, demonstrate that talent, and if you like, compare his talent to other young talents from around the world. Best place to do that is Europe. Beyond that, the best place perhaps is the Junior World Rally Championship. But it's massively expensive. He tried very hard to put a budget together to do that. And it hasn't happened. And for me, it's a bit of an issue. A bit of an issue. And it is being addressed by the FIA, and we know that. And one of the most exciting things for young drivers in the next year or two will be the Pirelli Star Driver Scheme, the reintroduction of that. If you look to this part of the world, the last two drivers, Molly Taylor and Brendan Reeves, who had a chance in the World Championship, both came through the Pirelli Driver Scheme. Maybe that is the route for young Bates, because what worries me a touch, and this is, maybe it worries me, I think it's just a talking point, is that in the past, as a young driver, if you had budget and you had talent, then the opportunity was there for you. But you need more than that these days. When we look to the young drivers who are getting the opportunities, it isn't, Jim Smith from Dundee that's getting the chance. It's Callie Rovanperä. It's young Solberg. It's young Schwartz. It's young McRae that's getting the chance. Is this something we should worry about? I don't think we should worry, because these kids are all supremely talented. But as Jim Smith from Dundee, 21 years old, you haven't got a name behind you. Would you be worried that these seats, and very limited seats, only seem to be available now to names within rallying? I don't know. I don't know if it's something that should worry us or not. What I would say, though, is that we could do more as a sport. And the FIA, they are clearly aware of the fact that it's difficult for opportunity for youngsters in rallying, and they are addressing that. But I think there's a very simple step. When I talked to young Bates the other day, he talked about one seat available for youngsters in the championship. 1 out of 9 as it is just now. The chances of getting that seat, that one seat, are so remote. If you're an investor looking to invest in a young talent, you'd be better off taking your $1 million and buying 1 million lottery tickets. You really would. The chances are so remote of your young talent making it. How do we increase the opportunity at the very top level for youngsters? Well, it's simple. We take that third car and we put an age limit on it, or we put an experience limit on it. Not only that, the third car has to be shared between 2 drivers. So if it's a 14-round championship, it's 7 rounds for driver A, 7 rounds for driver B. What do we get then? Well, we get 6 seats at the highest level with just 3 manufacturers. We get 6 seats for talent. And that is realistic. As a youngster, you think, I'm going to spend $1 million, $2 million of my family's hard-earned money, of my investors' hard-earned money, but there's a chance that if I prove myself, 1 of 6 seats could be mine. Is it workable? I don't know. The manufacturers might not like the idea. The FIA might not like the idea. There must be reasons why we don't have that mechanism within the current setup. But I'd like it to be considered, and I think it's something that needs to be discussed and investigated, because as it stands, there just aren't enough opportunities for youngsters. There isn't that, and the opportunity is all they need. I'm not saying that they're all going to go to the top, but your young Bateses here, your young lads that I've met in Lebanon, the Ngem brothers, if they've got to find €1 million, which they do realistically, you've got to have 2 seasons. You can't have 1 season in the Junior Championship or the WRC2 or WRC3 class. You've got to have 2 seasons. If you're going to find that €1 million, then there has to be a realistic chance, or a chance, not even realistic, a chance of finding a seat at the top level. Right now there's not, because those seats are being blocked out. They're being blocked out by the names, the youngsters of the former greats in rallying. Anyway, something to discuss going forward, isn't it? Now, what do we need to talk about? Our partners, and it's wonderful to have MRF tyres on board this year at the kitchen table. We thank them very much for their involvement. That's some really good news from MRF. Listen, MRF tyres came, I don't know if they came close to getting the deal to be the tyre supplier in the WRC, but what I do know is that they put in a very, very good pitch. And it was a ballsy approach, wasn't it? MRF tyres, not many people had heard of them, but they put together a very good pitch package, and they were unlucky not to get the deal in the WRC. But good news this last week, they're going to the ERC. with Craig Breen, with Hyundai. What an effort that's going to be. You know, they showed their intent last year, not just with the pitch process for the tyre supplier for the WRC, but the fact that they took on board Fiore Brivio, who's the professor of tyre technology, rally tyre technology. Pirelli, many years at Pirelli, an Italian. Then he's the man that developed that DMAC tyre that won in GB. They've brought all of that knowledge to MRF. And do you know what? The guy that runs the program, he's a very excitable gentleman, and he's a lot of fun, and he's massively passionate about both MRF and about rallying. I remember he phoned me before Christmas and he said, Colin, I'm in Sweden and we're testing our snow tyre in Sweden and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's better than all of the rest. I'm thinking, no, that can't be right. So I phoned the driver, who I won't name. I said to him, listen, you know, I know my friend can get quite excitable at times, but he is telling me that you're having the most remarkable test and that the tyre is better. And do you know what he said to me? He said, Colin, if I started Rally Sweden on this tyre in a WRC2 and an R5 car right now, I would win the R5 class. That is how good the tyre is. So, you know, MRF know they've got some work to do, and for the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully, they'll do that work in the European Championship, and, you know, within no time, they'll be a credible tyre supplier to rallyists around the world. So, folks, listen, thank you very much for joining me for my second take on my kitchen table from the wonderful Albert Park Yacht and Fishing Club here. If you have enjoyed the kitchen table, don't forget to share it, don't forget to like it. If you're on Facebook, don't forget, on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Again, like, leave little comments. I'm told all of that helps in terms of the distribution, the number of people that can see our little videos. So, well, from Melbourne, glorious beach, Saturday morning in Melbourne, thank you all very much for joining me. We'll see you in a few days' time in Sweden.